Hello again, and welcome back to year 4 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is week 8, day 1. We're continuing our way through the book of Genesis. So, last week we saw the Lord call Jacob to leave Laban and to return to the land he had promised to Abraham and to Isaac, and some 20 years before to Jacob himself at Bethel. We saw how Jacob had been cheated time and again by his father-in-law, and how God had blessed him anyway, and how Jacob had given glory to God for all that he had gained, counting it as the fulfillment of God's promise to him. This time we will see how Laban responds. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his kinsfolk with him and pursued him for 7 days until he caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night, and said to him, "Take heed that you say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad." Laban overtook Jacob. Now, Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsfolk camped in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You have deceived me, and carried away my daughters like captives of the sword. Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre. And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? What you have done is foolish. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night and said, 'Take heed that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad.' Even though you had to go because you longed greatly for your father's house, why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. But anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsfolk, point out what I have that is yours, and take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the 2 maids, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent, and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods, and put them in the camel's saddle, and sat on them. Laban felt all about in the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." So he searched, but he did not find the household gods. Then Jacob became angry and upbraided Laban. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Although you have felt about through all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsfolk and your kinsfolk, so that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. Of my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. It was like this with me. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, whom Isaac feared, had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night." Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children. The flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me." So Jacob took a stone, and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsfolk, "Gather stones." And they took stones, and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." Therefore he called it Galeed, and the pillar Mizpah, for he said, "The Lord watch between you and me when we are absent one from the other. If you ill-treat my daughters, or if you take wives in addition to my daughters, though no one else is with us, remember that God is witness between you and me." Laban said to Jacob, "See this heap, and see the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap and this pillar to me for harm. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob swore by the God whom his father Isaac feared. And Jacob offered a sacrifice on the height, and called his kinsfolk to eat bread. And they ate bread, and tarried all night in the hill country. Early in the morning Laban rose up, and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters, and blessed them. Then he departed, and returned home. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he called that place Mahanaim. Okay. So when we read this, it's kind of easy in the moment to sort of sympathize with Laban. He's just a grandfather. His daughters have been taken away from him. His grandchildren have been taken away from him. We feel like he has a fair point. But he hasn't treated them very well all the way up to this point, and he certainly has treated Jacob abominably. And that's effectively Jacob's response. He's like, "Why are you mad at me for running away without telling you? I worried if I didn't, if I told you, that you would not let me take anything but my own self away. Everything I have, I've earned, I've worked for. We made an agreement, and you've broken the agreement time and again. In what universe should I have trusted you to not break it this time?" And Laban argues with him, but he doesn't really deny the point. And he has family all around. This really is a family affair. And the sense is Laban says, fair. The only just claim that Laban actually has is the theft of his household gods. And they're there, but he can't find them. So that's kind of zoomed in. We feel bad at first for Laban until we really think through what has Laban actually done, what is his character, and then I think there's not a lot of sympathy left. Zoomed out, though, what we see here is sort of the expectation that Laban would have within the culture, within the society, and just within the circumstances. His daughters, his flocks, his grandchildren, the only thing that isn't his is this wandering nephew of his who shows up penniless and asks for a job. We could say, on Laban's part, that he has a legitimate expectation. He'll give Jacob a job, and Jacob will just stay there and work. And he has a place to live, he has a family, he has plenty of wives, this is great. Rebecca's never coming home, but hey, her son came back, and we can get some good work out of him. And after a while, when Laban's dead, maybe he thinks then Jacob can, fight it out with my actual sons, and But the expectation is the husband marries into this family and will work for them. What's the problem with that is that Jacob has a calling. Jacob has a task to do. Jacob is Abraham's grandson, and he still worships Yahweh, the God of Abraham and Isaac, where Laban is worshiping household gods and whatever else. Laban doesn't even claim, the Lord as his own God. He speaks of the Lord your God. He speaks of the God of Nahor, so his grandfather, and Jacob's grandfather, Abraham. But Laban, doesn't really buy this anymore. Laban has departed. He has abandoned this calling, and he's living amongst, the people of Haran perfectly comfortably. Jacob has to go back. And this is perceived as a breaking, as a violent, as a violation. And for this reason, as Jacob leaves, they have to make a treaty. And that's what's going on with the building of this pillar. They set up an agreement that okay, if Jacob's actually leaving, then he will not come back. He will not lay any claim on Laban's possessions. He will not come back with soldiers to, wreak vengeance on Laban. He's gone. If he's going to leave, he needs to be gone. And for Jacob's part, Laban needs to agree to lay off and go home and, just let it be. This is not a friendly parting. This is a treaty. This is an armistice. This is a border that is now set. And that's important, especially as a comparison point to what we're going to see next week. But for now, we'll simply wrap up that through all of this, the one who is, the true actor is God himself. Because God called Jacob, God sent Jacob there, God prospered Jacob even though Laban tried to cheat him. God called Jacob to leave, and now when Laban comes with armed men, presumably intending to take everyone else back by force and just kill the son-in-law who doesn't know a good deal when he sees it, God intervenes and tells Laban, don't you dare say a word to Jacob, either good or bad, much less do any violence to him. So God has protected Jacob, and that is why I think at the end, the last thing we see is Jacob goes on his way, and the angels of God met him. And Jacob saw them and said, oh, this is the camp of God, and he calls it that, Mahanaim. So Jacob realizes he's been protected, and that the Lord is faithful to him, bringing him back into the land that was promised to Abraham and Isaac and now to him, to Jacob. So that's it for this week. For day 1 of this week, we'll see you shortly for day 2, and we'll continue this story next week. God bless you all.